Hey guys, ET95 here, welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel. I'm Atrace95 and that is that. Now today, this video is not going to be like what I normally make, because, well, you know, I just thought I needed a different style of video for a change. So here I am making something that isn't on C2 or buses or trains at High Wycombe or somewhere different. Today, this is going to be Atrace95 kind of delves in a little bit into his kind of hobbies. So if you guys didn't know, my hobbies are like, I have a lot of hobbies, but like some of the main ones you guys know would be buses and trains, like public transport in general. Those are the kind of main hobbies that I delve into. Of course I have stuff like music and sports and stuff, but those aren't relevant for today. The one that I want to focus on is buses versus trains. This was a debate that I saw on YouTube, and it's been going around for like a couple of years now. And honestly, it's starting to annoy me that I've had to delve into it myself. So here I am doing it. So let's delve into the first thing. And everyone says trains are more efficient. Well, let me tell you, it is true. Trains are more efficient, especially because trains are like, you know, like they can be quicker and they can be significantly faster. However, the thing is if there's an issue on the railway or there's a broken down train somewhere along the line, then that causes delays and potentially service reductions. And if there's a delay or there's a service reduction, then your journey is going to take significantly longer. At that point, you might as well just take the bloody bus. And everyone says, and I've heard stuff like longer lasting, like trains are longer lasting, are like longer lasting in vehicles. While that is true, like it says there's stuff on like less cost for maintenance, which is why they last longer. It's because basically what I'm trying to say is that because trains are longer lasting and there's less cost for maintenance, companies will generally find it cheaper to maintain that fleet. Like for example, if you go to the Met Line and their trains are driving like, you know, like Aldgate to Watford, Amersham, Chesham, Uxbridge, you know, like those and imagine the mileage imagine the mileage that one of those trains gets on a daily basis, and then you multiply that by however many trains the Met Line has. When you figure that out, then you know that the mileage of that is ridiculous on its own one journey. Like one trip could be like, you know, like 40 miles, depending, you know, 30, 40, 20, well, 10 to 30 miles, let's say. And if you multiply that by how many trips that singular train makes, then obviously it's gonna wear out the vehicle. It's gonna wear out the train quite a lot. And then obviously there's people that say buses don't last as long, but what I say to that is that solely depends on how well the bus is maintained. You could get a really good Mercedes Citaro, which has been maintained very well, so it runs nicely, and you can get a right street light, which is, everyone says they're crap. But people say they're crap because most likely they haven't been on a good one. Or you can get any vehicle. You can get like a Citaro, which are normally known for being good. You can get a crap Citaro if it's not been maintained. You can get a good street light, a good MMC, for an example. And also here's the other thing: building rail is more expensive, but there is money saved for the energy side, which is true, because building rail, while it's like solid metal, it's like thick as well. I'll throw a photo up on the screen so you can see. Like if you go, like when you go to like Bicester Village and stuff, if I remember, when you look at rail, you see that like that is like them. I mean, obviously rail is more permanent, so it's like in the floor, like it's like in there, like you can't really do anything about it. You know, that's one of the things. So, like, because rail is, I mean, while it's more expensive, in the long run, it's actually cheaper. Because while trains can run at, like, up to 125 miles per hour in the UK for like a HST, and you know what I mean. And then trains can run like really high speed on those rails, and then while buses can as well. Typically, buses don't go high speed unless there's a section for it. Like, for example, if you're doing the 102 to Heathrow, there's a bit where you can go high speed, which is decent, but that's that. And obviously for trains can be fast depending on what time of day you get that train and how busy the train is also. For example, if the train is quite quiet, or like the line's gonna be quiet, or for example, if you take a Metro train at like 7 in the morning, it's gonna be busier because people are trying to get to work and school and stuff. And if you take a Metro train at about like 10 or 11 in the morning, it's typically it's going to be somewhat busy. It's going to be somewhat like there's going to be some people, but there's not going to be a lot. So when you jump on that perspective, that train would be quieter because it's not peak times. But the downfall of trains is that trains, depending on the schedule, trains might have to stop a lot along the way, depending on what. Like the Met Line, like all stations to Aldgate, so it's got like 20 to 40 stations it has to cover. And then, like I mentioned earlier, train delays can also happen depending on what's going on the railway, which it could be a lot. You can get like a broken signal or damaged wires or just any old random crap. Now for buses, while traffic and roadworks can slow down the bus and cause issues, the buses are not required to stop at every station, like every bus stop along the way, unless it's been requested by someone who you're picking up or someone who you're dropping off, or if it is a timing point, which means that the bus would have to wait there. Talking about the differences is that the point is that there's a lot. So the capacity is depending on what is more efficient for the journey and also the speed that you want to travel. If you have a lot of time to get to somewhere, then you can get obviously you plan out your journey based on how much time you have to get there and stuff like that. If you're in a real rush, then obviously you adjust your plans a lot. Let's say, for example, you have so much time, and all of a sudden something goes complete screwed, and then you have to now you have to now try and rush to get around. That is one of the things that you have to take into consideration. So, and then talking about development, so rails can be developed and extended out. Yeah, so like for example, you can extend like Vista up to like Banbury, you can extend Oxford Station up to Scotland as an example, even though that kind of already exists. But that's my point. That's kind of a point. So rails can be extended out and developed, but it would cost hell of a lot of money and hell of a lot of planning to try and get done. And then buses can also be extended out on routes easily, but that again can take a lot of planning. Like for example, if you extend the one to Hemel to Watford, that takes planning itself, because you have to plan out the route it's going to take and stuff like that. For pollution, both buses and trains run on diesel and also run on electric. They both can. Both can have high and low emissions, but it depends. It depends on depends on the engine that it is running. But even so, both of them have high and low emissions. But no one try and fight me for this, because I do want to say this. A diesel vehicle, like a diesel bus or car or whatever, will always give less emissions than an electric bus or car. But and that is also the case for trains, because for trains all you need to do is just you have the engine and you just pull back the lever and off you go. And well, like, you know, it's the same for electric trains, but the difference is that because electric trains require, you know, well, electricity obviously, then it's just bad. Obviously, electricity is not just, you know, like, it's not just there. It has to come from somewhere, and it comes from a fuel source, like an electricity station, or like a coal. You know, like well, you know, you guys know what I mean. Anyway, let's move on. So, for trains, so the pros are the fact that, so like the pros and cons. Let's delve into that. So the pros are the fact that trains have a higher capacity. Yeah, they do. There's comfort and amenities. Well, that depends on the train that you're taking. There's reduced traffic because obviously you're not on the road, so you're constantly going around. You're not like standing in one spot for like 10 minutes, unless you're too early at a train station. Then you'd have to wait around until it's your time to depart. The cons are that trains can be more expensive, and obviously the infrastructure, like I mentioned to you earlier, rails, and you've got to also build railway stations as well, and sometimes level crossings, and also trains are less flexible. Well, yes. The buses. So that's the pros and cons of trains. For buses, flexibility and accessibility. Well, accessibility because there's a wheelchair ramp on most buses nowadays. They are cost effective. They like literally singles cost like £3 on obviously singles cost like £3 on buses now, and returns are like £6. Compare that to trains. Well, yeah. But the cost of the cons of buses is the maintenance and the cost as well, and the cost of maintenance. So, now let's delve into. So that's the pros and cons of buses and trains. Let's delve into something else that I feel like has not been covered as much, where I've seen, from what I've seen, and I've been doing my research for this for like 2 weeks. For tires. So trains have steel wheels and buses have rubber tires. Now, both wheels have their advantages and disadvantages. So for buses, the tire depreciation can happen. Tire depreciation is one of the big things, and that happens because the bus's mileage, the weight of it, the braking, you know, like the braking, and like, you know, stuff like that. So, like, for example, let's say you have some buses, right? Like, you guys have seen Mahawican bus station videos. We've got buses that go to Hemel, Chesham, Chartridge, Heathrow, Windsor, Uxbridge, Oxford City, and Reading. If you add so let's say, for example, you have a bus that goes to Hemel back and forth for one day. And Hemel was about 20 miles an hour and 20 minutes at a time. Obviously, what I'm trying to say is that each of these buses, the 102, 3 and 4, 275, and the A50, the tires of those buses are gonna depreciate way more. They're gonna depreciate quite a lot. Not to say for stuff like the 32, the 33, 34, the 30, you know, all of them as well. Of course, the tyres are going to depreciate on those. But the big difference is that the Hemel, Chesham's, Heathrow, Windsor's, like, you know, all those routes that I mentioned, like the ones, and, you know, blah, 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 those again. They have a higher mileage. So the tyres are going to depreciate on them more, because of like the mileage and braking and stuff like that. But you know what I'm trying to say. it's stuff like that. Like Hemmel's like 20 miles each time. It takes like an hour and 18. It takes like an hour and 20 minutes. So it's like 80-minute ride. It's like an 80-minute round trip. That, if you look at the tires on one of them, like at the start of the day, and then when it comes back and look at the tires again, that you would have seen they would have depreciated quite a bit. Yeah, and that's not also to mention the fact that because of the engine and stuff, but the engine is a different topic. We're talking about the tires right now. Something else I want to point out as well is that because trains have steel wheels, like I'm not saying steel wheels are better, but because yes, they can depreciate as well, because obviously like of the same stuff, like mileage, braking, and the wheel profile, but also because of the train weight and the track conditions. The track conditions and train weight can also ease up to, like the steel wheels, they can depreciate because of stuff like that. So it's stuff like that I thought that you have to keep in mind. It's that while trains are heavier, well, because you've got more carriages, more doors, and you can carry way more people. Obviously, the weight of that, plus like the fact that it's steel on steel, it's metal on metal. It's stuff like that you have to take into consideration as well. Also, something else I need to mention is that the travel time it solely depends on where you are in the country and where it is you're trying to get to. In capital cities like London, Berlin, Warsaw, trains would be faster. The trains and tube, for example, would be faster because of stuff like traffic. If you ever tried driving in London, you will know it's a complete pain in the ass to get around. Try and just walking it, cycling it is fine, but just driving, oh my days, it's a nightmare sometimes. So, using that logic, using the tube or the U-Bahn in Berlin or the metro for most of Europe, it's going to be way faster because of the traffic. This logic also applies to trains. In cities like High Wycombe, it depends on where it is that you're trying to get to. If you're going to somewhere like Oxford City, so it's 30 miles, right? So I did my research, so like I said to you, I know what I'm doing. Obviously, if you're going to Oxford City, then the return, so for the train, the return is £42.20. The coach is £19 return, and the return on the normal bus is £6. So the train takes 50 minutes, the coach takes an hour, and the bus takes 2.5 hours. Obviously, in that scenario, I would get the train. Now, here's the other thing. Let's say you go from High Wycombe to Hemel, which is 20 miles. So the single for the train is £31.30 or £62.60 for the return, and that takes an hour and 35 minutes. The single is £3, the return is £6, and it's 15 minutes less. It takes an hour and 20 minutes to do that. So that's my point about where. And then here's the other catch. If you're going to London, like if you're going to or from London, then the train is always the best option. And here is why. Let's say you're going from High Wycombe to Stratford. That is 63 miles. And by train, that takes an hour and a half, and the single trip for that is £24.60 from what I searched, even though I don't think that's true. Or an anytime day ticket is £23.80. So it's actually stuff like that. For the bus fare would be £5.50 for a daily cap, and £20.50 for the coach fare, because I researched it that way. I researched coaches and bus, so I just typed in and just avoided everything, and then that total would come out to £26. So you saved a bit. So you saved like £3.20 on your fare, and the buses takes 3 hours and 40 minutes. So instantly it's 2 hours and 10 minutes faster than getting the bus. The train is 2 hours and 10 minutes faster than getting the bus. That is what I'm trying to say. So, but then if you're going somewhere like Uxbridge, then the train is an option, but the bus could be faster. This is one of those caveats. Also, using that same logic that I just explained there, then a tram can be slow as well, because trams run on rails, but also alongside the road or on the road for some part of the trip, which is it's one of those things. Jumping onto the point about trams as well, I was talking to one of my friends about this, Peter Train Into, shout out to you, mate. And I was talking to him about it, and I said to him that, like, surely trams would be slower as well because they run on the road and rail. And he said, it's true, but it depends on what tram network. So, like, for example, in Croydon, most of the trams run on disused old railway alignments. Yeah. Also, Peter Train Into, when I spoke to him about this topic 3 weeks ago, he said to me, I suppose, so, like, for example, based on travel time, I suppose it depends on how far you are travelling. If you only want to go around an hour from where you live, then the bus would be the best way. If you're travelling further or even international, then the train would be a better option. So basically, what Peter Train Into is trying to say is it depends on it depends on how far you're going. If you're going literally an hour from where you live, then the bus is quite good. If you're going further than that, then the train would be a better option. But I do agree with that. But if you're going to somewhere like Hemel Hempstead from High Wycombe and you don't want to get the train, then get the bus, because it's one bus, High Wycombe to Hemel, and you don't have to change buses or trains or anything. If you're going to Watford and if you're going to Watford via Hemel, then you would have to change. But then you'd have to change buses or trains or whatever. You get my point. That's what I'm trying to say. But Peter just point about the fact that trams in Croydon mostly run on disused old railway alignments. That's one of the things. Like, it's also because if you have rails, they're more permanent. So, like, once they're in. They're not that easy to remove. Obviously, if there's an old railway alignment and it's not going to be used, then there's no point in having it. But it will stay there because they're not easy to get rid of. And the fact that the trams in Croydon are reusing the old disused railway alignments up that way, then that's also good because the railways are being recycled. That's one of the other things. That's one of the other caveats as well that I feel like has to be pointed out as well. Also, one of the things I need to point out as well is train fares usually change depending on if it's peak times or what day of the week it is. But bus fares will always stay the same. But it depends on the distance you're travelling. For example, if you're doing, it depends on the bus company as well. Like, if you're just going on a short trip, like from the bus station to something like Sands, the fare's probably going to be about like £2.50, like £1.70, maybe £2. And then if you go from High Wycombe to Hemel Hempstead again as an example, that's going to cost you £3, like I briefly mentioned earlier. So train costs. Let's go with the cost of the trains, so you can get a visual insurance. So, like, train fares, what you're paying for, what you might realize being no one actually, like, what you might know but no one actually realizes it unless you've been told, is that the costs of trains include stuff like the rolling stock, like rolling stock could be like the fleet of trains, like I don't know, like a class like 165 or their S7 and S8 stocks, like the London Underground. The infrastructure, so like the rails and the trains themselves again, and the stations. The energy use, so you know, like if it's a diesel train, then you're going to be paying for you know, the fuel and stuff like that. The maintenance of the vehicles, which would include stuff like the rails, the you know, like the rails, the wheels, the actual train itself, you know, all that bollocks, you know. The salaries of the people working, like the people at the railway station, or the people at, you know, like the people driving a train and stuff. The working conditions, I mean, yeah. Obviously, train driving it is safe, but it can be dangerous as well. So you know, you got stuff like that. You've got public communication. I'm not really sure. I think that's like announcements and stuff. And of course, the most important one that you're paying for is the insurance, because obviously that is the biggest one that you have to take into consideration. Anyway, that was me trying. That's basically all I have to say about it. About the buses versus rail debate. If any of you have a different opinion or anything you want to add on, please do let me know in the comment section below. Obviously try and keep it peaceful down there. I know that among the transport community, this is a bit of a topic that you know, it can be controversial. So please try and don't fight each other in the comments below. Please don't try and fight me. I'm just covering this video because I wanted to cover this, because it was bothering me. Anyway, apart from that, honestly, thank you guys for watching the video. If you liked it, punch that like button in the face like a boss, and be sure to subscribe. Be sure to subscribe to me and Pridgyn Into if you're new. Also, I do want to say thank you to Pridgyn Into for his comments and stuff. And yeah. Anyway, thank you guys, and I'll see all you dudes in the next video.